Well, I feel like I say this every single month, but where did October go? I feel like it was here, and then all the leaves disappeared, and we are in November. And we're like halfway through November now. Where did time go? But I did a lot of reading. In October, I finished all of these books, and let's just say it was a wide variety of things read, and I had some books that I really enjoyed reading this month. So the first book I read this month was Songbirds, and this distinctly reminded me of Where the Crawdads Sing. It's got the child who runs away. So basically, she accidentally lights the fire that sets her family's house on fire, and she believes kills her parents. So she runs away into the wilderness, and she's surviving on her own. So it really reminded me of Where the Crawdads Sing, when Aggie is alone in the wilderness trying to survive. And I really enjoyed the multiple POVs in this, because what ends up happening, I'm not going to spoil anything, is that the POVs collide in a way that I did not think they would. And Aggie, as the girl who's living in the woods, is the only person that really sees what actually happens. So it was really fun to watch the different POVs intertwine like that and come out when you really want to shake that one POV and tell her, like, don't believe him. This is not supposed to be happening. But Aggie knows the truth, and you can only hope that it will come around at some point. The next book I read was from my critique group. So it is not published, it's not out there, but it was a World War II story by a friend. So I will leave it at that because I'm not going to spoil anything for her. After that, I read Garden of the Midnights by Hannah Linder. So I actually just had an author interview with Hannah. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about her journey into writing and some tips from a Regency romance author, make sure to check that video out. I'll make sure that it comes up after this video. So this was Garden of the Midnights, and I really enjoyed it. It was very sweet and romantic. I read When Tomorrow Came a couple months ago, so when I saw that she had a new book coming out, I really wanted to snag a copy, and I really enjoyed it. There were some awesome moments reading it where you're led on with the character who's also being led on to believe something, and then there's grand reveals of things aren't actually how it seems. The story is basically an identity trope. I don't know if that's actually a real trope, but now it is. So it's basically how he was led to believe that he was this person, and then he realizes that this higher up guy is his father, and things all lead to this climax moment when some reveals happen that really twist this trope on its head. So it was a really good book, and I really enjoyed reading it. So if you want to learn a bit more about this, make sure to watch Hannah's interview because that was a blast. The next book I read stayed in the midnight theme, so we have A Midnight Dance. She gave me this book at ACFW, and I have been dying to read it. I've read the other one she gave me, and I loved it. And this was no exception. It was just so beautiful and graceful. She really writes her books with a dark air of mystery. It's just, I don't know, it's just a vibe that her books have, and I am all for it. And then there were multiple moments while reading it that were just big twists that seemed to come out of nowhere, but really kept the story moving, propelled it forward. It's really funny with it. Whenever one question seemed to get answered, 10 more would appear, and it was just so fun to keep reading. It kept me turning pages, and it's not a thin book, but I read it pretty fast because it was just so good. After that, I read The Tea Chest. I actually didn't love this book as much. So it started in a modern POV, and I don't know what it is about modern POVs or contemporary POVs, but I really enjoy books that swap between historical and contemporary. And this one pulled me in right away with the contemporary side. It's about a woman who is trying to become a Navy SEAL, and in doing so, she uncovers these secrets from the past in a tea chest. So honestly, I didn't mind the contemporary POV at the beginning, but the thing that really bugged me was just there were some major gaps between the historical POV and the contemporary. So it's like 5 chapters of one, there's a lot of chapters of the other, and just the stories felt like they disconnected because there were such huge gaps in between each POV, whereas I really enjoy it when it's like one chapter's historical, one chapter's contemporary, or maybe 2, and then they just flow a lot better, whereas I felt like this was like entering two different worlds, where it's like a big chunk of the book is historical, then contemporary, then historical, and then in this historical timeline, I just didn't really love the writing style. It felt a little bit forced and almost a little bit tropey, but not in a good way. So overall, it just was not the book for me. And then the last book I read was Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And since the movie was coming out, I decided I was going to read this at the end of October, beginning of November, since like the beginning of the year. So it was a blast to actually read it. And now all my siblings who have read The Hunger Games have a list of who is reading it next. And it's checked it on my library card, so they might have to renew it themselves because I don't want to be the one that gets fined for overdue books because it's going to take a while for 3 or 4 more people to go through this book. I know this book got a really bad rap, or maybe not a really bad rap, but it wasn't a fan favorite. I loved it though. It's such a good book. This is the second time I read it. I read it for the first time right after I read the whole Hunger Games series for the first time. And I didn't love it as much then because I just come out of Katniss and Gale and Peeta and I was kind of obsessed with those books. And so this felt really different, whereas reading it now when I've read the other Hunger Games books like 5 or 6 times each, I really loved it. I felt like it's really an amazing villain story. Let's just say it like that. It's an amazing villain story. And the morals are just really interesting to read, where it's Sejanus and Coriolanus and Lucy Gray, and it's just the right and wrong is really evident, where you see characters veering off and they go to places of no return, and it's just such an amazing, well-written story, and it is so stinking long. So I ended up listening to a lot of this as an audiobook because I had some sugar cookie orders, as in like 7 dozen sugar cookies that I had to do, and so I just did that while I did orders, and it was really handy to be able to listen to something, and I really enjoyed it. So overall, I just love this book. I really love this whole series in general, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie. So those are all the books that I read during October, and I am wondering, what books did you read in October? Did you have any that stood out that you were really excited to read? I'd love to chat more about it, so make sure to drop a comment below, and let's dialogue down there. So without further ado, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for next week. I'll see you then.